What is up, guys? Top tier Yu-Gi-Oh here, and today I've got a Numeron Red-Eyes Subterror Guru deck profile for you guys. And so I've been having a ton of fun with this deck, and it really solves a lot of the problems that you would see in more standard Guru decks. And so like right now you're gonna see either Numeron Guru decks or Red-Eyes Guru decks, but this really solves a lot of their problems, the first of which being the consistency. If you look at Numeron builds, you maybe only have 6 to 8 starters. You have your networks, your walls, your terraformings, things like that to get the Zexal going. But then in Red-Eyes Guru decks, you only have 6 starters. You have your 3 copies of Red-Eyes Fusion, your 3 copies of Red-Eyes Insight, but in this build, because we're playing both engines, that allows us to play more starter cards. So that's number 1. This build is going to be more consistent. The second problem that this build solves is that you're able to follow up better on subsequent turns. And so when you're playing the Numeron build, it's very easy to go Zexal turn 1, but then what are you doing on turn 2? You can't really follow up with a second Zexal because you have monsters on board, so really you can only follow up with your Subterror engine. And then in the Red-Eyes build, because you should only be playing 1 copy of Dark Magician and 1 copy of Red-Eyes, you can't follow up with more Red-Eyes Fusions. And so you're starting with that 1 Dragoon, and that's kind of all you have with that, so you have to follow up with your Subterror engine. But in this build, again, because we're playing both of them together, you can start with your Numeron engine, end on a Zexal, stop your opponent for 1 turn, and then on turn 2, follow up with the Dragoon as well as your Subterror cards. And so that gives you better follow-up plays. And yes, you do have to play more engine requirements for this build. That's just part of the game, but the deck is still overall more consistent, and that's what I've been having the most success with this current format. And so let's go ahead and get into the list. I'm sure you guys are going to enjoy it. If you want to see more similar content, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. But let's go ahead and get into that list. Starting with the main deck, we have 3 copies of Hidden City, 3 copies of Guru, 3 copies of Fiendus, 1 copy of Archer, and then 2 copies of Final Battle. This is pretty much the entire Subterror engine. I have seen some lists playing Umastrix, but in this build it just doesn't work because we're already playing so many other engine requirements that you really want all of your cards to be playable as soon as you draw them in. Archer is even kind of teetering on that edge of cards. Maybe you need, maybe you don't need, but it does come up a lot, and it's a great way to deal with your opponent's cards once you flip them face down with Guru, as well as being a great way to get to your engine as well. So Archer is actually really good. Final Battle is insane. I wish I could play 3, but space is very, very tight in this deck, but Final Battle is insane. After that, we are going to be moving on to our starter cards, and we play a lot of them, which is again one of the main reasons for playing this variant of Guru. But for the starter cards, we have 3 copies of Network, we have 2 copies of Numeron Wall, we have Terraforming, which can search your network as well as your Hidden City, so it serves multiple purposes, as well as Set Rotation, which does the exact same thing. Then we also have 3 copies of Red-Eyes Fusion, and so we have 10 starter cards overall. We have the 3 networks, 2 walls, 2 field spell searchers, 3 fusions. And so this is a lot more than you could play in a regular Numeron build or in a Red-Eyes build. So this makes the deck very, very consistent. And we have other consistency cards in the deck as well. Now, one thing I will mention is that Set Rotation I think is a little questionable. It is another way to get to your engine. It is a way to get to your starter cards as well. But at the same time, it can lock you out of your field spells if you can't clear your opponents. That can be a big thing in certain matchups. And so you do have to be careful when you're playing Set Rotation. But then on the other hand, you can also lock your opponent out of playing their field spells. So if you're playing an opponent that relies on playing field spells, that can be pretty big too, especially against dragons right now. You can keep them from being able to play like their Boot or their Ravine. If you're playing against Invoke decks, stopping Meltdown can be huge. And so it's kind of, what it does is important for the deck to function, but the field spell interactions are also helpful against certain decks, but also can hurt you as well. So it's a tricky card altogether, but I think it's worth playing for sure. But that's pretty much it for the starter cards. Once again, we have 10 of them, making this deck very, very consistent. After that, for the hand traps, we have 3 copies of Gamma, 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird, and then 3 copies of Infinite and Permanent. So I wanted to play the hand traps that I felt were the most impactful because space is so tight in this deck, we don't have a lot to play everything. I felt that these were the ones that if I draw, they're going to give me the highest chance of winning that game. But that's pretty much it for the hand traps. Now for the flex spots, we're playing 3 copies of Forbidden Droplets, and then 3 copies of Pot of Extravagance. Extrav is definitely like a hot take right now, especially in this type of deck where your extra deck space is also very tight, but we're able to play enough cards of the important ones that you can play Extrav pretty confidently and not lose. Like, the chances are very, very low of banishing all of your Dragoons, and also very low of ruining your Numeron engine as well, because we play so many of them. And so Extrav is a great way to have more consistency. You're able to draw into your cards more often, so I definitely like Extrav in this deck. And then Droplets is literally insane with the Numeron engine, because there are worlds where you just like Droplets your opponent, discard like most of your hand to negate their entire board, and then you activate Network, summon all of your guys, and you attack into their board for game, because all of their attack doubles. And so like Network plus Droplets is just game sometimes, and so that's pretty insane. But also just being able to go second. Being able to go second and play through your opponent's disruption is very key for this deck, because all of our starter cards can deal with opposing boards. Like, again, the Numeron engine can deal with opponent's boards both through attacking over it, but you could also go into Mega Clops and clear stuff. That can be big. Or you have Dragoon, obviously destroying your opponent's monsters can be very good, dealing a lot of burn damage like that. And so it's very possible to go second and deal with opponent's boards if you're able to negate their effects. And so Droplets is very good for that, as well as being another form of disruption when you're going first. So I definitely think both of these are necessary at 3. Now, Droplets is expensive, and so if you don't want to play it, I think a good replacement for it would be Cosmic Cyclone probably. That would be what I would replace it with. But this deck is also 42 cards, and so you could just cut these 3 and then add like an upstart. That would also be a really good substitute. It's not really a substitution or a replacement, but it's what you could do instead of playing 3 copies of Droplets. So definitely keep that in mind. But yeah, this is a 42 card deck. I don't think playing over 40 in this deck is a big difference, because we have so many starters. The main thing that I think playing over 40 kind of hurts is your odds of seeing a hidden city, which is very key for this deck, because both of the engines that we play, both of them have the same restriction to where you cannot normal summon or special summon. So like with your Red-Eyes fusions and it's Numeron Calling that has the restriction, but you can't normal summon or special summon. But what you can do in both of those cases is set monsters. And so if you have either one of these with a hidden city, what you can do is you can hidden city and search for a copy of Guru, set Guru, flip Guru with hidden city's effect, and then search like a Fiendus or something else. And so that's kind of the key interaction between your Subterror engine and then both of your auxiliary engines. And so you really want to see hidden city a lot, and playing over 40 does slightly reduce your odds of seeing hidden city, but I do think it's worth it, because there are 42 cards that I wanted in this deck, so that's why it's at 42. But moving on to the final group of cards in the main deck, we have our engine requirements. Once again, we have quite a bit of them just because of the engines that require us to play a lot. So we have 2 copies of Numeron Calling. I definitely was back and forth on this for a while, because on one hand, games aren't necessarily grindy to where you always need 2 copies of Calling, but the second one does definitely come up, especially if your first Zexal isn't impactful enough. You need to follow up with something. You might not have a Red-Eyes fusion, but also just being able to grind a little longer when you do have to is important. For the rest of the engine requirements, we had the 1 copy of Driver, and then the 2 Red-Eyes materials. So that's it for the engine requirements. Let's go ahead and move on to the extra deck. So we are going to start with, let's see, we have 1 copy of Zexal, 2 copies of Zexal, and then a Mega Clops. So these are the boss monsters for the Numeron engine. Zexal, being able to stop your opponent from activating cards on their turn, that can be huge. And instead of playing 3 copies of Zexal, I went with 2 and then a Mega Clops, because when you are following up, you really don't want to follow up with multiple Zexals, because Zexal on your turn is very weak, and it doesn't do as much later into the game, because once the game state simplifies, your opponent doesn't have as many cards that they're not activating, if that makes any sense. And so on turn 1, your opponent has 6 cards that they will not be able to activate. That's very impactful. But on turn, let's say 3, they maybe only have 3 or 4 cards in hand, and you might know what 1 or 2 of them are, so you're maybe not stopping that many different plays. And so it's not as impactful later into games to where Mega Clops is, because it can clear opponents' boards. It can revive S0 from the graveyard, and so that can be big. So instead of making that follow-up S0, you can make a Mega Clops, clear your opponent's card, and then revive an S0 from the grave. So you're still getting S0, but you get a little bit more like that as well. So that's why I like playing 2 copies of S0 and 1 copy of Megaclops. With that, we have 2 copies of Gate 1, 2 copies of Gate 2, 2 copies of Gate 3, and then 2 copies of Gate 4. That rounds out the Numeron engine. And then for the Red-Eyes cards, we are playing 3 copies of Red-Eyes Dark Dragoon, 2 proxies. I was not buying 3 Dragoons just for this deck, but if you want to play this deck, play 3 copies of Dragoon or don't play X-Drav. You can't play 1 Dragoon in X-Drav, it's just way too risky, but because we are playing X-Drav, I did want to play 3 copies of Dragoon. So you kind of have the choice there if you want to play this deck. You don't have to play 3. You could just play 1 and then not X-Drav, and then cut those 3 X-Dravs, play the 1 Upstart. That'll make it 40 cards, and then you'll still have like pretty good consistency. So that's the replacement there. But for this build in particular, 3 Dragoons. Nothing more to really say about that. But if you were counting that as only 14 cards in the extra deck, these are the 14 cards that I think you must play. I mean, I guess not must, if you do only play 1 Dragoon. And then the final card that we are playing in the extra deck is 1 copy of Verte Anaconda. And this is just for those weird scenarios to where you weren't able to draw into a Red-Eyes fusion, but you had other monsters on board. Like maybe you have a Zexal up and you run out of materials on the Zexal. You can link away like Zexal and a Guru or Zexal and like an Archer or something into this, get into your Dragoon and maybe get something else going. And it's not always the best play. It almost very rarely is a good play even, but it does come up sometimes in like these very rare random scenarios. And so I felt like it was just kind of a safe choice to play 1, but you really could play anything in this spot. It's those main like 12 to 14 cards that are the most important. And so that's pretty much it for the extra deck. Let's go ahead and go to the side deck. For that, we are playing, let's see, 3 copies of Nibiru, 3 copies of Lancia, 1 copy of Pankratops, 1 Subterror Cave Clash. I like this in grindy matchups. It's just kind of good against like those random rogue decks you might play. Like maybe you play against Altergeist one game, Cave Clash is pretty good, or Sky Strikers, or Salamangreat to an extent. It's really good in those types of matchups. 1 copy of Mystic Mine because it is searchable with terraforming as well as set rotation. 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone, and then 3 copies of There Can Only Be One, which this deck plays around beautifully because your Dragoon is a Spellcaster and then Zexal is a Warrior. Wait, is Dragoon Spellcaster? I'm pretty sure it's Spellcaster. Okay, yeah, Spellcaster. So that's Spellcaster. S0 is Warrior. Now, all of your gates are the same type, so you can't summon all of your gates while you have There Can Only Be One up. So, but you can have Zexal on board, then activate There Can Only Be One, and then like continue playing from there because all of your other cards are different types as well. So like Guru is a dragon, Archer is a fairy, like, and those are pretty much all the monsters that you actually summon in this deck. So you're good. You can play through There Can Only Be One very easily. So that's pretty much it for the side deck as well. It's very standard, nothing too special, but that's kind of where we're at in this format. The format is so defined and so, I don't want to say solved, but, you know, solved. So that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let's actually do a couple of test hands just really quick. I do want to show you guys what your hands look like, how consistent this deck is and whatnot, because I did rave about the consistency for the first couple of minutes of this profile. So let me just show you guys really quick. Alright, just finished power shuffling. Just going to do some more quick shuffles and draw a few hands. Alright, hand number 1, Network, Red-Eyes, Calling, Droplets, and Gamma. So on one hand, you're like, oh, okay, we drew these 2 bricks. That kind of sucks. But on the other hand, you drew Network. And so you're going into Zexal, and you're going to be able to stop your opponent for the most part. There's not many ways to play around Zexal either, because you can play around Gamma, you can play around Imperm, and then we also have the Droplets as well. So pretty good hand. 6th card for going second to Driver, which kind of sucks. But it doesn't really matter because we have Droplets plus Network. So this can just be an OTK sometimes. So maybe you just like win the game because of that. So that's hand number 1. Let's go ahead and look at hand number 2. Let's see if we do like 3 or 4 of these. But we have Droll, Network, Gamma, Imperm, and Set Rotation. So this is a really good hand because we have the Network to be able to stop the opponent. We have Droll, we have Imperm. Plenty of ways to stop our opponent with this hand. But then we also have that Set Rotation. So we're going to be able to go into a Zexal, and then set rotation for hidden city, search guru, set guru, flip guru, search, and then we're pretty good from there, because then we'll have like Zexal, Fiendus, Imperm, Droll. Like, your opponent's not doing anything. Then from there you get your Subterror engine going because you're flipping guru, you're getting final battle, and all sorts of stuff. You just kind of win from here. That's like an auto win type of hand. So let's look at another. And you guys are seeing in all of these hands, like, we're drawing cards that are maybe not good. Like, maybe you draw your engine requirements, but it's not the end of the world in this deck. And that's one of the things I like about it. So like in this hand, yeah, we drew 2 bricks, but that's okay because we drew both Network and Red-Eyes Fusion. And so due to sequencing, you generally want to go Network first, just because if you Red-Eyes Fusion first, on turn 2 you can't Network. But if you Network first, on turn 2 you can Red-Eyes Fusion. So you would go Network and, you know, use the effect like that, and then Red-Eyes Fusion on turn 2. It kind of sucks that you don't have anything else in this hand. Like, this card does nothing. Like, half of your hand does not, like, these 4 cards on turn 1 do nothing, or on your opponent's turn, but you do have this one card that does everything, and it stops your opponent from doing anything. So kind of balances out in a way. Hopefully the opponent can't play through it. Let's see, that was hand number 3. We drew Driver in 2 of those 3 hands, so maybe I didn't power shuffle as well as I would have liked, but nonetheless, we have drawn playable every single time, which is kind of all you can ask for in Yu-Gi-Oh! You want to be able to play your deck, and then from there, hopefully your skills get you to the win. But ideally, you just want to be able to play a lot of times. Ooh, that sounded bad. So this hand, we have Wall, Guru, Droplets, Network, and Red-Eyes Fusion. So once again, we have a good starter card. We have a follow-up. We also have the Guru, so at least we're going to be able to like set Guru along with our Zexal, and that'll be something. Like, the opponent's not really going to be able to play through Zexal very well. We also have the Droplets, but then on our next turn we can flip the Guru, like flip summon it, and then kind of get some plays going like that. So that's a thing. Going second, we have Droplets plus Network. That's maybe just game. And then we also have the Wall. And Wall's really good against cards that your opponent might be summoning that negate the activation of cards, because what you can do is activate Wall on your opponent's turn, and then not summon, but activate your Network from the deck on your opponent's turn. And even though Network is on, or I should say, because Network is on the field and has already been activated, your opponent can no longer negate the activation of it. From here on, they have to either clear it from the board, which if they do, you still have Network, but if they don't, they would have to have a card that negates the effect. So that's kind of a cool ruling thing that you can look out for. But let's do maybe one more hand. Final hand, hopefully it's good. We have Hidden City. I think this is the first time we drew Hidden City directly, but Hidden City, Calling, Set Rotation, Final Battle, and then Red-Eyes. So this is what I was talking about before with Set Rotation, is like, and like, you want to think that this could be a Network and get your plays going, but the downside is that this sets a card on your opponent's side of the board, and because they have that set card, you wouldn't be able to activate Hidden City. And so this combination of cards is actually not combo, or not full combo, not like Network, Hidden City, you know. So you can't really do as much with this hand as you would like, and you kind of have to choose between whether or not you want to go for a Zexal straight up with Set Rotation, and then try to get your Hidden City plays going another time, or you can start with Hidden City. You already have the Final Battle, but then you have no other defense with it aside from maybe the Set Rotation. And so it's kind of tricky here with how you want to play this hand out. So that's again one of the downsides of Set Rotation. But if you're playing against dragons, let's say, this can be big because you might be stopping Boot, you might be stopping a Ravine if they need to make a Ravine play. If you're playing against Invoked, you could be stopping something like a Meltdown. So there are times where the Set Rotation is good, but there are times like this where it can kind of hinder your hand as well, to where if this was a Terraforming or a Network or a Numeron Wall, this hand would be nuts because you'd already have Final Battle too. And so that's one of the downsides of Set Rotation. But overall, I do think that this is a very powerful deck. I think it's very consistent, as you guys saw. Every single hand we drew is playable, and in most matchups, every single one of those hands is going to give us a chance to win the game, and that's all you can really ask for in any deck. And so, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile. I know it's been a long time since I've uploaded one, but hopefully you guys will enjoy it. Let me know if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, tips, tricks, suggestions, or anything, let me know down in the comment section below. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out a lot. But as always, thank you so much. Thank you for your attention, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Hope you guys are having a great weekend.